Radio 1.
Yes, Yoko Ono.
Who's calling?
This is Mike.
Mike Bergeron?
Yes.
One moment, please.
Da-dum-da-dum.
Hello, Mike.
Hi.
So?
Thanks a lot for talking with me. As you know, your films are beginning in a retrospective tonight down here at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. They're only showing 3 of them, 3 of the programs. I wish they were showing all 6.
Ah. What are the films?
They're showing.
Don't have to worry about it.
They're showing the MoMA and Bottoms film, then Erection and Rape, and then Walking on Thin Ice and Imagine.
That sounds like a nice collection.
Since I'm not going to see some of these, or at least not immediately, let me start out by asking you about some of the ones that won't be shown here. 10 for 2. Why was that never released? Was it just because of the different artists that appeared in it?
No, it's just that I think we just never got releases from some people, and then it just makes it difficult to release it.
What?
I have the sole rights to the film because I made it and I paid for it and everything. I produced it. But then there was a catch-22. I think my office never got releases from people who are involved in the film. In other words, people who appear in the film.
What is the status with John Sinclair? Is he still in prison?
No. I mean, he was released as soon as we did this concert.
I see. The bed-in. How big a deal was that in the time? I mean, was that covered fairly extensively in the media?
Yes. Well, it's really refreshing to talk to somebody who's so young that who doesn't remember.
I mean, I do. Right. I am young, and I.
Well, let's put it this way: it was a big media thing at the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, but having all those people in, I mean, somebody like Al Capp, was he specifically brought in because people knew that there would be a confrontation?
They're not going to show the Bed-In film in Texas?
No, that's not on the programs.
Oh, too bad.
Again, I hope maybe that they'll show the other 3 programs maybe in during their next programming session, either at the beginning of the year or at the end of this year.
That'd be nice, yes.
But all those people that came in, I mean, how were these people invited? Al Capp and Timothy Lear. I mean, were they sent out invitations on such and such a day?
No,
be here.
No, invitations were not sent out. What happened was we just went to this hotel and sat in bed for peace, and we proclaimed it, and we sort of welcomed the media to come and see us. So we were inviting them in public, so to speak. We didn't choose the media or anything like that, media people. And I think that there were tons of people who wanted to come because of the timing and because it was a honeymoon, etc. And I think that the Apple publicity person at the time probably screened them, etc., but not so much. In other words, there was a big press conference and all that. Well, I wouldn't call it a press conference, but I mean, tons of photographers and reporters were allowed in at one time. And then after that, individual people who wanted to interview us, and they all came. And the individual ones, I think they were screened, but still, and there were many of them, really.
What was your attitude for dealing with the public since you became famous?
Well, you're talking about...
Just say like that whole era there, and then afterwards, because as you're saying, the public was always coming up to you.
Oh, that's true. Well, did I say that the public was always coming up to me?
Well, no, you didn't. You didn't. But I guess I inferred that. But I mean, just on a regular basis, do you have any sort of way that you deal with things in general?
Oh, well, I don't know. You see, the thing is that unbeknownst to the public, in the art world, I was getting some media attention, and well, media attention is not the right word, I suppose. That's an exaggeration, but I would say that if I had done a show at the time, I would always get a few critics interested in it, and they would come and interview me, etc. So that's how I felt that there was a kind of communication situation. And then when I went to London, yes, even before I got together with John through my artwork, the English media gave me a lot of attention, to the point that they would be writing about if I went to vacation to Greece or something, they would write about it in the Daily News or whatever. In other words, there was a big media attention.
Mm-hmm.
And this was with my former family, rather, because so it was an attention that was given to my sort of, I think, personality as an artist or performance artist or whatever. Performance artists is what you call them now, isn't it? You know.
Right.
Anyway, I mean, those days there was no word as performance art, you know. But anyway, so that's what I was, you know. So when I got together with John, of course, the media attention increased, but I wasn't that. I didn't sort of differentiate it as much in the beginning. I just sort of thought, oh, well, there's another press conference, or the press is coming and all that. And of course, there was a bigger crowd in it. But then I started to notice that the intensity was quite different from when I was an artist alone. And also that I think that before that I did get quite sympathetic kind of articles usually, and also concentrating mainly on my work. And if there was anything personal that they were interested in, they were pretty decent about it. They were writing me up in a nice way. But then once we got together with John, when I got together with John, I think the media started to turn 180 degrees on me and became very nasty. And it was a total surprise for me. The media has been nasty in the beginning, and the same people, well, probably they're not exactly the same people, but the same media who was writing me up as an artist suddenly started to say, this is how I am an actress or something like that, you know. So I was thinking, yes. And then, now that I'm more or less used to it, I suppose, I see it from a point of view that it was a very good experience. I gave a lot of fun to the media, I think. And in a way, I sort of gave them good time. So.
Did that bad experience that you had with the media, do you think that sharpened your business abilities or made you more hardened as sort of your approach to art?
Well, I feel as a human being, I'm very thankful that I had all that experience. If I just avoided all that and after graduating school or whatever, we just going into becoming a professor or something, and I never came out in the world, the real world, so to speak, then I wouldn't have experienced it. So I could have become, I could have had an experience, a total different experience in the sense that becoming an artist who's sort of just talking about her own work and living in a village or something, a village in New York, and just being this successful in that little world, own little world, and not ever being scarred like I have been. And that's one life, I suppose, and I could have had that too. But I think it was a good experience because without knowing it, I would have been a different person. And knowing it maybe made me wiser. Who knows?
In the press notes, there's a description of you as a Fluxus Artist. Was this the name for a group of artists?
Yes, there was a group called the Fluxus.
That group, I mean, that was similar, say, to Warhol's group of artists, or
I wouldn't say they were similar.
Uh-huh.
Well, you might see some similarity. I mean, that's up to the critics, you know.
Right. Well, where did the name Fluxus come from, though? I mean, how did that become to be known as the name of that particular group of artists?
There was a person named George McCunis, and he was a kind of an organizer, artistic organizer. Well, you could call him an impresario, but that's really unfair to him. He's an artistic organizer who was very creative in his own way, but he was not an artist. He chose to be an artistic organizer, and he's the one who coined the name Fluxus and also decided who's going to be that movement. So all of us artists were sort of doing things separately. But I suppose George felt that my work was that my work he would consider to be part of Fluxus movement, and that's probably a compliment. And that's how it was. He even decided that Master Duchamp and Klaus Oldenburg and those people belonged to the Fluxus movement.
Mm-hmm.
And Master Duchamp at the time was already dead. So, I mean, you know, it's the concept, I think. I mean, the concept that he had was a very good one. And I think that he thought that my work belonged to that. And therefore, just as all the other artists, the friends of mine, who were included in the Fluxus movement, I was included. And that was quite nice.
What did you personally think of what was going on with Andy Warhol in the factory and how he sort of made a mark on pop art?
Well, I was doing it before that. Well, of course, Andy might have been doing it before that too. But when I went to Japan, after having done some work here, I went back to Japan for a couple of years, I think. In 1964 in Japan, I first read about Andy Warhol, and he came out in a bank, you know. Or was it 1963? I think it was 1963. And I thought, wow, you know, it's quite interesting. And then when I came back to New York in 1964, I met him, and I thought he was quite a nice guy as well, quite intelligent. But still, he was not sort of big in a sense, a worldwide station. It was that big. And, you know, we were sort of meeting in Lower East Side, kind of around there and everything. And that was the start of sort of knowing him.
Okay, with all this, with all your art, you eventually did this movie Fly, and then you also had an album named Fly. If how much of one fed off to the other? I mean, how much of the musical influence were you able to put into the film, and how much of the film were you able to put into that album?
Well, I think the idea of the film came first. It was a filmic idea, and it was based on one joke, which is I saw some cartoons where a guy's looking at this lady with a very open dress, and her breasts are sort of sticking out, but then there's sort of like a fly on the breast, you know. And the wife is saying, "What are you looking at?" And he's saying, "Well, I'm looking at the fly."
Mm-hmm.
That was great, you know. And I wanted to make a film that one fly would just be crawling over this naked body from the beginning to end. And just sort of that feeling of while you're experiencing the film, that you would not know whether you're actually following the fly or the naked body. I mean, there was that sort of...
You're just kind of drawn into this voyeurism.
Well, it's a voyeurism, but also at the same time, maybe you are interested in the fly, the movement of the fly, but then you might be more interested in the scenery or whatever. And the thing is, it's a kind of challenge to a psyche or whatever, that we don't really know what we are really looking for. And it gives kind of, you know, it gives a feeling of getting a double take, you know, sort of like to yourself, that you're saying, well, what is it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I like that feeling. I like that kind of throwing that kind of challenge to the audience. And that was my first idea. And I always wanted to make this film. And when we came to New York, it was an ideal time to set it up and do it. And we did it.
On one of the other albums, I think Plastic Ono, there's a part where the record just ends, but it keeps playing. It's an endless groove there at the end.
So, when I did that film, around that time I made a Fly album. The idea of the word fly was something that I was interested too, because it has double entendre, and I always get into one word, you know, some word that I like. The first time I used the word fly was when I did this performance piece, which is a ladder, and people are supposed to climb up on the ladder and fly. And, well, what they actually would do is to jump off. And so most people think that they just jumped off, but it might be in that particular second they might have fly. Well, they might have experienced the feeling of flying.
That would have been around, what, 1964? The performance piece?
The performance piece. It would have been that, I suppose.
Okay.
But, I mean, it's all sort of recorded, so I should find out about it.
Well, what I mentioned about that one album where the endless groove would just sort of track. I mean, where would you come up for some of the ideas in the music? Because it also seems to me that some songs in particular on your albums are really timeless in the sense that I feel like this is something that people will be listening to 50 years from now and will really be excited about it, whereas a similar piece of music from the same era and time won't have that effect. And a lot of it is not the kind of music that people normally listen to today.
That's true. I think it's very interesting that the ones that I made in 1969, around that time, from 1964 on, I suppose. But, I mean, those are the ones that, most of them are lost, and until, that's why I said 69, because I think that from 68 on, when I got together with John, that's around the time that they were actually recorded, and we have the record of them. Probably the first one that's still around is the one that I did with Ornette Coleman and Albert Hall, and that was recorded, and that was eventually put on this album called Yoko Ono Plastic Phonograph. But that direction, I think, they're starting to. I do hear it in, say, some people's work. Some rock groups are sort of adopting some kind of a part of it, I think, in a way, that kind of style. But also in new music, there's sort of like that they go on endlessly kind of thing. They're starting that. But still, I think that something like the Fly music that I did for the Fly, I put it on Fly Film. That kind of music is maybe it's too new. I don't know. But I'm not the one to tell, really, because some people come and say, well, look, they enjoy it. And in fact, I think some dance groups are starting to use my music, that type of music, to for their dance experiments or dance pieces, I think. So I don't know. It might be this is the time, maybe, or it still may not be the time, But I really think that artists are still, what is meaningful about artists at all, if there's any value for the existence of artists, it's the fact that they can open doors for people, they can expand the horizon for people, and if they're just reflecting the society or something like that, I think there's no point in it.
Now, Bottoms started out as a 4-minute film. Why did the decision to elongate that one?
Oh, it was not my decision in a way.
Uh-huh.
This came about in a very strange way. I made a 4-minute film, and I was very happy with that. And then, but most of my things happened that way, like the inspiration comes from the circumstances, because I think that has something to do with the fact that I'm a woman, and in the society of women, it was easier for women to work that way. But I went to London, and then I had lunch with somebody who came to my gallery show. And during the lunch, he just started saying that was asking me if I ever made a film. And I said yes. And he said, would I consider making a feature film? Because if it's about an hour to an hour and a half film, that he would like to finance the film. So I was just biting a sandwich, and I was just gulping it. I said, yes, I have no idea. And I said, well, what is it? He was saying, what is this? Well, what about? And I gave the idea, and I described the idea. And I made a 4-minute version, but I like to make a feature-length version of it. And the reason was because I really wanted to come up quickly with an idea, but also I thought it was great suddenly, that if it's a feature length, it becomes a different film in a way suddenly. I mean, the experience will be a totally different experience.
How radical was that? I mean, you're shooting people's bottoms, but was there no end of people who wanted to get in on it because they'd heard about what you're doing, and you had to turn people away?
So there were so many people who wanted to get in on it, but I think that it came to a point that one, the impetus was sort of lost in a way, and for me, I didn't want to just keep on filming bottoms endlessly, and I just quit at one point. And I was going to shoot 365 bottoms, one bottom for a day or something like that, but each day. But then I just quit before that, and I said, well, 365. It's just a conceptual number, so it doesn't matter,
And there's a similar idea in Up Your Legs Forever, because that's also feature length.
That's true.
Unfortunately, that's one of the films that's not going to show here. But I'm going to bug them over at the museum and say, look, you got to get these other 3 programs. Well,
I mean, I think that maybe this generation, the younger generation, might be interested to know what happened in the bedroom, for instance, because it was such an incredibly interesting performance art piece, I think. I don't think anybody else did a performance art piece like that.
And I also feel when they're reviewing an artist like this, you should show everything that's available. Now, I don't know if it's a matter that certain programs had to be in other cities or scheduling or what.
Yeah. Well, you see, the titles that you gave me that you're going to be seeing it there, I think that that shows that it will show the gamut of my filmmaking in a sense of technique or sense of style, because that too, I'm not one of those people who decide on one style and just stick to it, because I think that's boring. But also, I always was critical about artists who decide that, well, now I'm doing lines, and I sold it with lines, so let's keep it with lines. So I'm one of those people doing circles, so let's keep it in circles, because then comes a career.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, in fact, if you're identified with a certain style, I think you start to get some monetary value as well. So it has to do with money, not so much with art. And I mean, probably some people will say, well, it's easy for Yoko Ono to say that. We have to make our living. But this is the kind of attitude I had from the beginning when I was struggling financially in a loft and all that as well. So I think that you'll see that there's a total difference in style in each film in a way. Though there's sometimes it's repetitious too, because I mean, like bottoms don't have your legs there or whatever. There's a certain connection there, I suppose. But the reason why my stars changed is interesting too. The reason is not so much an artistic reason, but because of the circumstance. It was just important to express it that way.
During Imagine, that seems probably like the most home movie-like of...
Which?
Imagine?
Yeah.
That seems like the most home movie-like of any of the clips that I saw on the videos that I screened.
Oh.
And you must have hours and hours of footage that hasn't even been assembled into films for people to see, correct?
I suppose there is, but it's sad in a way because it's been a long time, and maybe the films are not, because we never took care of them or anything like that, so they might be deteriorating or whatever. You're talking about outtakes.
Right.
Yeah, there should be outtakes. I don't know where they are, really.
But you and John were documenting large parts of your life at that time. Isn't that correct? I mean, you would have camera crews with you all day?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Or just during specific times then?
Yes, specific times, but it's almost like, an artist would always have a brush and a canvas or something and doodle whenever they can. I think that filmmakers do tend to have a camera available and use it whenever they want to. But I think that in our case, because we were so busy with other things as well, it wasn't like we had a camera all the time there. I think it would give that impression because of, for instance, films like Imagine. And, of course, the bed-in period was extensively recorded. But it had to do with